The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
And we are back with another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by Florida Beer Media. And if you are watching your favorite restaurants and bars and breweries, you will notice that there are a lot of people in the hospitality industry that are having a difficult time as the quarantine continues on for an unprecedented, untold number of weeks. There are a number of organizations around the country that are setting up benefits to help these employees. And one of the organizations here in Florida is Florida International University in Miami, out of their Chaplin School of Hospitality. So we are very, very lucky to have the dean of that school, Michael Cheng, on the Florida Beer Podcast with us today. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me onto this podcast.
Absolutely. I actually just found out about some of the programs that you're doing because we have a local brewery in Planning, Yeasty Brews, who is selling pins of their logo and donating some of the funds to the Hospitality Industry Relief Fund that you have set up. Can you tell us a little bit about the program and kind of where that got started?
Sure. So the program started probably about 4 days or 5 days after the dining rooms were mandated to close, the restaurants and bars. And we felt that, since we were putting out and educating students to go into the hospitality industry and the devastation that is taking place at that time, we felt we needed to do something. So right away, we reached out to our industry partners, including those who have supported the Salvation Wine Food Festival, and we asked them, what is it that you need most during this time? And unanimously, they all said it is help for their employees. Because with the mandated closures of the dining rooms and the bars, nobody could serve food anymore. Everything had to pivot to a takeout or delivery model. So there's a bunch of people getting laid off. So we felt, well, we had to do something. We have to help them. So we took $500,000 from the Salvation Wine Food Festival's proceeds for this year. And then we got a matching from Bacardi and Badia Spices and got it up to $1 million. And then we started disbursing that. So we launched the application. We had to date a little over 800 restaurants and bars who have applied. And we're going through the awarding process, I estimated close to 8,500 employees have been helped through this relief fund. So as of right now, we've raised almost $1.6 million, and we'll continue on with the relief effort for as long as we need to. We're also launching the recovery phase 2 weeks ago through our new Bacardi Teach program. And with that one too, we made a little pivot. So we have a new relationship and partnership with Bacardi North America, and we created the Bacardi Center of Excellence at the Chaplin School. So the intention then was to create a professional skills training program called Bacardi Teach that was going to be targeted for bartenders to enhance their skills to help them go from bartenders to bar owners. When this pandemic hit, we saw there's a bunch of bartenders that were literally out of a job because the bars were no longer open. So we felt that we had to pivot at that point and started offering the programming for free. And it took us about 6 weeks to develop everything and change it onto online. And we have since then launched at least 6 or 7 e-learning modules, anywhere from mixology to different spirits, that's available for free to anybody who wants to take it.
Interesting. And at the end of that program, there will be a certificate, because I've noticed there have been other programs such as contact tracing that other universities have offered for free in a similar vein with the modules and then having a certificate. So will there be a certificate of some kind at the end of Bacardi Teach?
Correct. Well, at the completion of each module, they do get a badge. And then at the completion of 5 modules, they get a certificate from Bacardi Center of Excellence at the Chaplin School. Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of go back to the first program just a little bit, the Hospitality Relief Program, how difficult was it to find businesses like Bacardi and whatnot that wanted to and were willing to participate with you in this program?
I would say initially we relied on our existing partners, and those were the first ones that we reached out to. So, for instance, Bacardi and Badia Spices, they've been long-time supporters of the festival. And right away, there was no hesitancy. They saw what was happening in this industry, and they wanted to help. So for us, that was pretty easy. We also had other companies, smaller companies, who have helped us along the way, like, for instance, Diageo, the Estefans, Volley 305, the vodka brand by Pitbull. And they've all given us in various amounts. And then we've also done fundraising through the university under the FIU Strong umbrella. And we've collected donations as well from our alumni. So right now we're seeing a lot of different funds available out in the industry. But I think the last time I checked, most of them were already out of money or already closed. And we're still going.
Excellent. That's amazing.
A lot of this I attribute towards the tenacity of the founder of the South Beach Wine Food Festival, which is Lee Brian Schrager. He had his last big sale on Sunday, and I think I heard he raised about $28,000 or $30,000 on a given Sunday, which was amazing.
That's amazing. Have you at the Chaplin School been partnering with any of the other schools or departments at FIU for any of their additional programs?
So right now we have been talking to the College of Medicine on their neighborhood health program. So if you're not familiar with neighborhood help, it targets different neighborhoods within the Miami-Dade County and helps the families who need the most assistance. And they provide a variety of different services from counseling to financial advising and so on. So what they had asked us to do was, could they partner with us on creating a model where these families could receive food? So instead of having to go to a food distribution site, perhaps work the local restaurants and then have them create the food, the menus for that community that they would be able to get as part of their assistance. So we've been working on that for a week or so. We're, I think, at the final stages of vetting and reviewing all the applicants, and then we'll start identifying which neighborhoods to target first.
That's amazing. Obviously, because the Chaplin School is so big and has been around for such a long time, there's a lot of people in not just Miami-Dade, but Palm Beach and Broward counties and beyond that have gone on to operate and own hospitality industry businesses. Have you been hearing from a lot of them in terms of how their business has been affected, what the future looks like for them, and so on?
Yeah, we have been in touch with several of alumni and even the ones who have supported us over the years for the South Beach Wine Food Festival. This next year is the 20th year anniversary for the festival. So we've really worked with a lot of different restaurants. Initially, the number one thing they tell us all is without the dine-in customers, they were losing approximately 80 to 90% of their revenue in a month. And many of them weren't sure what the next step is or how long it was going to go. So I think several different options were present to them at that point. You know, whether do they pivot a little bit and adopt a delivery menu as well as a takeout menu, and do they do pop-ups, or do they completely shut down? So I think as the weeks turned into months, we started seeing restaurants who were unsure if we're going to reopen, started doing takeouts. Shortly after that, a couple of weeks ago, is when the county decided to let us reopen at 25% capacity for the state. But then we also got support from our local commissioners who got it to increase up to 50%. But even then at 50%, I just don't think that's really a sustainable model, not for hotels or not for restaurants. Because this is the hospitality industry. You know, the whole concept of going out to eat is socializing, and socializing requires people. So when you have half the number of people, there's not really socializing, and there's so much uncertainty still out there. A lot of the businesses are they're trying to do the best they can with what they have. I think we're not really sure what the long-term effects are. There's been several predictions and reports on how many restaurants will survive, and it goes anywhere from 1 in 5 will survive to 3 in 5 will close. So it's just like we have to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just restaurants and bars that are affected, but obviously universities are affected as well, especially the Chaplin School, which is such an intense and hands-on program and some absolutely beautiful facilities from what I've seen.
Yeah.
How did the Chaplin School have to change its curriculum for the spring semester, and what are you looking at with the summer and fall of 2020?
So when the pandemic happened and the stay-at-home order was required, we all went to remote work and remote learning. And fortunately for us, both our degrees, the bachelor's and the master's, were completely online already. So for us, it was a matter of adapting what and who was teaching what in class using the online format that was already in place. So I think for the most part, we had very little hiccups because we had the experience on the online part of it. And then for the summer, we just plan everything to be online. Going into the fall, we know we want to reopen on August 24th for face-to-face classes. So we're taking a very cautious approach because we need to know first, and our students also deserve to know that it's safe to come back before they return to campus. So we need to make sure that there's either a vaccine or herd immunity, and we have all the safeguards in place. I know FIU has put together a plan for repopulating the campus. So we're really restricting the number of people that's going to be in a confined space, which means we're looking at different models for classes to be delivered. One of the greatest things I think that we're doing too for this fall, we have a class called Advanced Food Production. And the initial thought was that while it's a required class, we may have to put it online and we may have to do some substitution for another class that can be taught online. But the instructor for that class felt strongly that if the industry can pivot and adopt all these safety and hygiene protocols, so can we. So I thought, well, that's a great idea. So he went out and he did a bunch of research and he presented a plan to me, which I intend to present to the provost to review, is can we teach that class using the same guidelines that the industry is using? So in essence, we're being relevant, and certainly if the industry can do it, so could we.
That's actually a really neat idea. I was very impressed to hear that. And obviously, you've got the Chaplin School. UCF has the Rosen School. There's a lot of big hospitality programs, not just in Florida, but in the country. Do you foresee, once this is over, once we're able to sort of recoup and sort of download all the information, do you think that there would be a class in the near future talking just about the pandemic, about responses, and about lessons that the industry has learned?
Very likely, yeah. We're already in the process of modifying some of our content within the Mega Events program. We launched a Mega Event program that's online. And as you know, the Mega Events refers to festivals. So those are large gatherings of people. And that's not going to happen anywhere in the next 12 to 18 months until we have a vaccine or herd immunity. So we've already started the process of updating the information in there on how would we deal or how could we execute a large event, even what's happening today. And I think what's going to happen just on the event side of it, we're seeing more hybrid type deliveries. So virtual events that are sold for at a lower price point, and then the in-person, highly curated, personalized events that cost a little more money for those, but there'll be safety protocols implemented for those as well. So we're adding all of that into that. We're also seeing, one of the silver linings, I guess, if you want to call it, as a result of this pandemic, is the acceleration of the adoption of technology. So everything is contactless today, and we're seeing that. So we made a decision. We're going to accelerate our adoption of hospitality technology into the curriculum. We actually started that last year, and now it's just when we see this, we're like, we need to step up our game and really infuse all of that into every single class. So our students know how to deal with it when they graduate from here.
Okay, that's perfect. And unfortunately, you do have to mention the festivals because not only do you put on the South Beach Food and Wine Festival, but you also put on North Miami Brewfest, which is one of my absolute favorites. Do you see that? It's such a great event. Do you see that even going off this year, or will it maybe go virtual like you mentioned?
Well, we're planning on it still. We have the date set for it, November 14th. But I think everybody's watching to see what happens today. Because, we've seen some states that reopen early with bowling alleys and hair salons. And at the moment, I'm not seeing an increase in new cases across the country, which is a good sign. And then today, what we've seen with the unrest, too, and a lot of people are in close proximity. So we have to closely watch over the next couple of weeks, along with the Memorial Day weekend crowds, if there's going to be a spike in new cases. So at the end of the day, we have to make a decision based on the information we have at that point. The information we have today shows that if we practice social distancing and safety and hygiene protocols and wear a face mask and wash your hands, you can control the spread of the virus. So if that continues on, we may be able to have a Brewfest on November 14th. It will have to be a bigger footprint. We'll be a little more spread out. I think we have to figure out a scheduling process so you don't get 500 people all together at the same time, but rather be spaced out. So I think it is possible as long as those protocols are followed and implemented.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much, Dean Michael Cheng from the Chaplin School of Hospitality at Florida International University. Thank you so much for coming on the Florida Beer Podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Your friends at the Florida Podcast Network want to use our platform to keep us all informed and connected. And while these conversations are greatly needed right now, and we hope they are helping you get through this trying time, we are podcast hosts, not experts in coronavirus or any other kind of medical issue. Please consult and follow the CDC's guidelines at cdc.gov. That's cdc.gov. Then please visit floridapodcastnetwork.com/coronavirus for some additional resources and ways to connect to your local community. With social distancing being our call to arms, we need to feel more connected than ever. So by visiting floridapodcastnetwork.com/coronavirus, you will help us all get through this with additional resources and ways to connect. Stay safe and healthy, and wash those hands.
Thank you so much for listening to our special coronavirus quarantine episode of the Florida Beer Podcast. We're going to try and get back to normal operation as soon as possible. In the meantime, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter. We're at Florida Beer Blog. We're on Facebook at FL Beer Blog, or email us at floridabeerblog@gmail.com. Florida Beer Podcast is a production of floridabeerblog.com and of the Florida Podcast Network. Field producer is Steve Pekala, and our executive producer and grandpa poobah is Jemmy Legagneur. Find us, rate us, buy local, and stay indoors and keep yourself safe through this very, very confusing time. Drink Florida craft.